Drawing hands at 6 mugs. Hello everybody and welcome. In this episode I'm replaying 3 drawing hands which are sequentially dealt at the 6 mugs cash game table. Here I showcase one interesting drawing hand for the cutoff, hijack and under the gun game positions. Meanwhile I'm running Spades Advisor version 2.0 on my iPad Air. Well, it's time for the first spot. Here I'm starting in the cutoff position and receive the hand King 10 suited. After choosing these cards in Spades Advisor, the up shows me that the hand provides the equity of 39% against one player, using the table's best ranked hand, as defined by the mixed playing profile. That's enough for being interested, given I'm receiving a fitting situation. By saying that, I mean the outcome in which no tight aggressive player has made a substantial bet of 3 times the big blind or more. All through, the hand runs perfectly fine heads up against the loose aggressive player, say someone who likes doubling my min raises to 4 blinds. Rick opens with a min raise from under the gun. Adam doesn't continue in the game. Now it's time to decide on how to proceed. The pot provides $3.50 and the requested bet is $2. Spades Advisor displays, right beside the equity above of the probability speed display, that the minimum pot has to be at least 1.53 times the bet X. The result of this multiplication expression leads to the pot requirements for gaining profit. This expression can be understood as simplified pot odds, where the variable x is the open bet amount to make the call. When performing this calculation and receiving a requested pot size that is larger than the real pot given, this means that on the long run you're losing some of your stack. This is known as minus EV, minus expected value. Otherwise, the pot requirements can be as high as requested, which leads to the conclusion that no stack change is anticipated. What's called zero EV, zero expected value. Otherwise, there are those valuable spots left, called plus EV, positive expected value, where the required pot size from this calculation gets lower than the real pot size. These spots result in being able to gain some profit when remaining involved. Here for this example it's given with 1.53 times $2 and is equal to $3.06. This means by remaining in this spot with a bigger $3.50 pot for 10 repeated tries, I'm certainly gaining some money by simply making these calls over and over again. In addition, what makes this spot even more beneficial is it's very likely to receive another caller. Such an outcome would increase the profit substantially by providing 1 or 2 additional dollars in the pot and lowering the equity for only a few percents. In addition, you should regard that all the following bets from later streets aren't included in this $3.50 pot. All estimated opponent betting on later street is labeled as implied odds. The estimated implication here is easily said the sum of all expected later made bets from every opponent available. As a result of this achieved pot size requirement, I make a flat call. A raise to $4 is here not an option, since the hand isn't strong enough and Nick would most of the time make the call. Furthermore, drawing hands should avoid heads-up situations when there isn't enough fold equity for 3-betting. Tom, located at the bottom position, makes the predicted call. Joe mugs his hand in the small blind. Thereafter, Mo also folds from the big blind position. The flop is the Queen of Diamonds, 10 of Hearts, 8 of Hearts. After entering all cards in Spades Advisor, it shows that the situation remains promising indeed. Thanks to that flop given, it's with 46% almost a coin flip to hold the strongest hand after drawing the upcoming turn. Not a bad outcome. I hit middle pair and got position on the loose player in here. Speaking of Rick, he checks. Because there is only one opponent left, I decide to make a $5 opening bet. This way I receive more information about where I stand with my middle pair. Nevertheless, I expect flush draws to make the call. In case I get rid of Tom, my chance to win the pot is quite good. Tom makes a flat call. What's not so amusing anymore. Nevertheless, starting from the bottom, he definitively could be on a draw or dominated hand like Jack 10. Besides that, he also might use much better hands like Jack 9, King Queen, or Queen Jack. Thereafter, Rick chooses to check raise in this spot. He bets $15 into a $17.50 pot, resulting in an almost pot-sized bet. This means by betting so much, Rick either has a queen or he shamelessly steals the pot. The simplified pot odds would be about 2-1 for anybody to make a cold call. Nevertheless, the fact that I've already spent $5 and only have to bet another $10 amount is lowering the pot odds to about 3-1. The overcard on the board, the substantial re-raise, and most importantly Tom, a tight and careful acting player, are my reasons to mock the hand. Tom makes a flat call and shows he stays confident in winning the pot. It's much nicer that way than seeing him fold. When running only versus Rick, I should be calling his 3-bet just to see his next move. The turn is the 9 of diamonds. Therefore, the inside straight draw with the jack gets there. I'd have picked up a straight flush draw beside my second pair. It's a beautiful improvement, but I'm happy with my somehow tight decision to fold post-flop. The equity for this spot stays almost the same as post-flop, with 46%. In addition, in 26% of all tries, I end up winning this hand with either a 3 of a kind, straight, flush, or straight flush holding. Sounds great, yeah? Let's first check out what happens next. Rick bets $21, what's almost half the pot of $42.50. That's an interesting bet size, which could be called using the pot odds long-term perspective. This is valid even with the estimation that the hand is running behind and surely needs to improve. The simplified pot odds are 3-1 on the call, since the pot offers with $63.50 about 3 times more cash than one bet of $21. This implies, for this spot, that the requested equity needs to be at least 25%. Before continuing, it's important to reconsider the conclusion that the hand is much more likely running behind. For example, say, against King Queen used by Tom and King 7 in hearts in Rick's possession. This guts-based assumption is related to the hand's betting curse, including all the information on how both opponents are playing their hands. As a result of this impression of being most of the time the underdog, I use the improve win with top hand chart and equity value located under the probability speed panel. Doing that, I assume that my recent holding without hitting an out on the river isn't good enough to win. In Spades Advisor, the improve win with top hand bar diagram uses dashed lines to mark very important equity positions. They are 1 to 5 or 16.7%, 1 to 3 or 25%, 1 to 2 or 33%, and 1 to 1 or 50%. Now I change to odds. And I go back to percent. These positions are important because they are showing you the needed top hand equity for calling a 4th pot-sized bet, a half pot-sized bet, a full pot-sized bet, respectively an extremely large overbet. In this particular hand example, the green equity bar in the diagram should be at least as long as the first dashed white line, identifying a 25% share. Notice that the hand has exceeded this barrier as requested. All this is based on the 26% chance during which the river hits a hand improving out. But then again, on average, I'd be calling this large bet 4 times in a row to make it only for once. 4 times $21 is almost equal to my stack size. In addition, there's the awful outcome when I'm calling and ending up with a 3 of a kind hand against the straight. There is also a very small possibility of becoming the underdog in a much worse backdoor flush versus flush disaster. All this information implies to fold the hand because it isn't the made hand, ignoring the fact that I'm not involved anymore. This is how I would proceed. Because of my overall cash budget, gambling habits and playing style. Normally I'm rather tight conservative than loose optimistic, and don't waste too much money on drawing hands. This way I design my game to become much less spectacular, but greatly more stable with less variance. From my experience, I'm sure that calling too often and more than appropriate is the number one source of becoming uncomfortable, tilted and frustrated with the game. Back to the action. Thereafter Tom makes again the call. The river draws the tray of hearts. The flush would get there, but it's the one with the wrong suit. This unfortunate last community card means I missed every hand improving out. In Spades Advisor, my final equity is stated with 28%. Furthermore, after including the hand's betting sequence, I believe the third pair's equity is not much more than 0%. That's much lower than stated here in Spades Advisor. Rick bets again. This time it's $42. Tom makes another call, but doesn't seem so happy anymore. Rick shows him Ace-5 suited in hearts. He has received the nut flush, thanks to that lucky river. After that, Tom turns over his hand for free. Hey man, that's awful, it's Jack 10 offsuit. That means he had the straight since the turn. And the winner is Rick. Rick's starting stack increases plus $88.50. The subsequent hand, 10-8 offsuit, gets drawn at the hijack position. After the cards are defined in Spades Advisor, it shows that this situation doesn't look as promising as before. With only 24%, the equity is rather on the low side. It's way too marginal for having 4 opponents deciding after me. Adam opens with $3 raise from under the gun. Because he's loose and aggressive, his hand is often marginal too. Nevertheless, a skilled loose aggressive player normally raises a lot of marginal hands from a late game position and not from an early one. Because he's the first deciding in here, I'd give him some more respect, despite of his playing style. From under the gun, I'd give him Jack 9 suited, Jack 10, Queen Jack, King Queen, etc. But all this doesn't matter anyways, because 10-8 is only exceptionally good enough to join the game from the hijack. The equity strongly advises to lay down this hand, therefore I fold. Thereafter, Tom makes a 3-bet to $6. Doing so, he reveals for sure that he has something much better than 10-8. From the button, Joe makes a flat call. The small blind player Mo folds his cards, as well as the big blind decides to give up. Afterwards, Adam calls by doubling his previously made bet. This development is the verification that he owns rather a solid hand. But who knows, it in fact depends on how crazy a player actually is. For this particular spot I used the strong playing profile because Tom and Joe are both carefully choosing their hands for value. This profile is optimal for this spot mainly because of the large $6 pre-flop bet, which normally indicates something really strong. Nevertheless, it's valid that Adam's hand range could be a bit worse than what's defined by the strong profile. The general rule of thumb is that you always build your opposition's preflop hand range regarding the strongest opponent, not the weakest. Therefore, in case a single tight aggressive opponent is remaining in the hand together with a lot of loose aggressive players, it's wrong to enable the loose playing profile. This results in the very poor equity of 16% to win the flop. Such a low chance shows that it's a fine choice to already be the spectator. The flop deals 8, 4 and a king. All card suits are hearts. After hitting the 8, the equity to win the turn remains insufficient. With a value of 21% to win the next street, only another 8 or 10 would turn things around. Adam bets $15 into a pot of $19.50. Therefore, it's around 3/4 the pot size, what he is willing to risk. This creates pot odds of 2.33 to 1. And thus request equity to offer at least 30%. Tom shoves his remaining stack of $14 and is all in. Joe mocks his holding. Now it's showdown time. Adam shows the hand 6-5 offsuit. This means he started with a very low offsuit connector and improved to a flush draw combined with an inside straight draw. This clearly makes an important player knot. It reads as follows. Adam opens with 3 times the big blind and afterwards calls a re-raise of 6 times the big blind using only 6-5 offsuit from under the gun. Thereafter, Tom proudly turns over his set of 4s. The turn is the ace of clubs. The equity to win the river drops further on to only 7%. Subsequently, the river draws the 10 of spades and finalizes the hand. This results in an improved chance of 56% against 2 unknown strong hands. Now it would look for the first time promising equity-wise, but knowing the opponent hole cards, it's not. In the end, I would have received a 2-pair hand which loses against a 3 of a kind holding. As a result, Tom wins the $47.50 pot. His starting stack more than doubles by growing plus $27.50. The next following hand, Queen 10 suited, is seen from under the gun. After the hole card specification in Spades Advisor, it informs me that this spot here is slightly better than before. Nevertheless, with 30%, the equity is for another time relatively low versus a single opponent. Drawing hands need enough company or a high fold equity to become really valuable. Luckily, after another player joins the action, things are looking better. Therefore, being the first in here, I make a min raise to $2. That's done as an open invitation for everybody around into playing the hand. Tom doesn't want to join this time, therefore he mocks his cards. Afterwards, Joe makes a $2 call. The next following player, Mo, decides to call too. The small blind, Rick, gives up his hand. The last in sequence is Adam, the big blind player. He also lays down his holding. This means the plan to see this hand at least 3 ways worked out well. Therefore, it's, as defined in Spades Advisor, a profitable situation with 2 remaining opponents. The flop is d6 and a pair of 9s, with 2 hearts on the table. I hit a flush draw and also possess 2 overcards to the board. With 2 remaining opponents, I want to see the turn for cheap, and therefore decide to use check call as game approach. Joe also checks. Thereafter, Mo bets $5 into a $7.50 pot. Therefore, he bets 2/3 the pot. This defines the pot odds as 2.5 to 1. Logically thinking, the requested hand value has to be somewhere in the middle between the pot-sized bet with 2 to 1 and the half pot-sized bet with 3 to 1. This leads to the requested equity percentage, which should be somewhere between 33% and 25%. More precisely, it's 28.6% of equity what's needed. Including the fact that Mo is here often bluffing in position, calling is more profitable than check raising. Otherwise, when catching him on a bluff, he could either re-raise the bet as a non-believer or give up. To sum things up, it's possible to meet any mixed playing hand, and not only made hands. That's the background why I used the overall hand equity instead of the top hand equity below. The pot odds analysis isn't needed when using the min pot statement in Spades Advisor. It shows that the pot has to be at least 2.52 times the bet of $5. When using 2.5 times the bet of $5 as simplified calculation, it's equal to the real pot size given here. It's equal to $12.50. Because 2.52 is times x is a tiny amount more than 2.5 times x, this means the real pot is smaller than requested. That's a slightly unprofitable call. Besides, doing this call doesn't change that much. It's therefore rather break even. In addition, even calling a pot-sized bet here, requesting substantially more equity than provided is most of the time fine. That's based on further betting after improving on the turn, implied odds. A certain thing for making profit is that you need a further bet. After receiving either the flush or top 2 pair, you're good with at least a half pot-sized bet or $7.50 more in the pot, on either the turn or the river. This implied additional bet changes everything. As planned, I make a flat call. Joe does also remain in the hand. The king of hearts is the turn. Wow, nice! I hit my flush and everything looks great. The equity soars to 81% to win the river. It shows me that I'm a big favorite now and end up winning 4 times in 5 tries. In order to keep both passive opponents in the hand, I only bet $14 instead of a pot-sized bet. I believe that every holding with a 9 or a king would surely remain. Still valid is that with this board given, I haven't won yet. Subsequently, Joe makes the call. Afterwards, Mo also calls. The river shows the 2 of hearts. This card offers the wrong suit and lowers my success chance substantially. In the end, the equity in Spades Advisor is given with 78 71%. As a result, I'm winning almost 3 times in 4 trials. Not as strong as before, but promising. With 4th hard on the table, things are different now. Therefore, I won't call an all-in or pot-sized bet of a passive player in here. After that river, I'd like to check call a reasonable bet of about half the pot, but not much more. My line here is passive to avoid disaster. Joe bets $32. What's fine by me. Mo doesn't like it anymore and lays down his hands. As proposed, I make a flat call and hope for the best. Joe shows with Jack 9, a 3 of a kind holding. Thereafter I turn over my pot-winning King High flush. As a result, my starting stack increases plus $75.50. That's it with the drawing hands. Thanks for your attention and have fun!